Shakespeare Lesson 2. 2.1 Introduction. In this lesson we are going to learn the literary concepts like Shakespearean tragedy, Shakespearean comedy, romance, sonnet and revenge tragedy. This is necessary for you to understand the writings of Shakespeare. By the end of the lesson you will familiarize yourself with the social and literary background of the age. 2.2 Shakespearean tragedy. In a tragedy of Shakespeare, we find action revolving around a central character who is the hero of the play. The other characters are involved in the action and they serve as links in the story of the hero's fate. The tragedy is therefore named after the hero. These tragedies have no love themes. They are built individually and respectively on the themes of hatred and revenge, jealousy and suspicion, envy and ingratitude, ambition and intrigue. The hero in a Shakespeare's tragedy is not an ordinary man. Yet he is not a superman. He is above the other characters by virtue of his rank and gifts. He is a character of public importance. Therefore, his fall evokes pity and fear in the audience. Despite many other noble qualities, the tragic hero in the drama falls because of one Hamlet is endowed with, the courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, and sword, but his tragic flaw of indecision ruins him. Othello is, no doubt, a noble and valiant general. But he is ruined by his jealousy. Macbeth is too full of the milk of human kindness. But his black and deep desires cause his destruction. Lear is every inch a king. But his violent temper and lack of judgment drive him to his doom. Thus, unlike in Greek tragedy in which the hero is a victim of an implacable destiny, these tragic figures in Shakespeare's plays are ruined because of the tragic flaws. But despite the intervention of the supernatural and the play of chance, they chose in each case with the hero, who can overcome these influences, if he so chooses. Being what he is, Shakespeare's tragic hero is destined to precipitate his own downfall. Shakespearean tragedy violates classical unities. The external action is wide-ranging, covering wide stretches of time. The place is frequently changed. They include journeys overseas. These are not found on the Attic stage. We should note that Shakespeare was writing for the Elizabethan audience who had taste for variety. Shakespearean tragedy is action-packed. The action on the stage is violent and vivid. As a counterpart to this, there is inner conflict in the hero's mind. The hero belongs physically to one of the two opposed groups. In his mind he is divided against himself. Finally, he is defeated both outwardly and inwardly. But along with the hero, other characters also suffer. But Shakespeare's tragedy, which is a story of undeserved suffering and death, does not depress the audience. On the contrary, the suffering characters who are noble and powerful strengthen and exalt the spirit. The good may perish with the wicked. This does not mean that the evil is victorious. The evil is always shown as meeting with punishment. This makes the audience go away quiet and reflective, while it is not, at the same time, weighed down with gloom. 2.3 Shakespearean comedy. The word, comedy, is derived from the classical Greek word that originally meant a village revel. In ancient Greece, comedy seems to have originated in bawdy and ribald songs or recitations in fertility festivals or gatherings, or also in poking fun at other people or stereotypes. Aristotle, in his Poetics, writes that comedy originated in phallic songs and the light treatment of the otherwise base and ugly. He also adds that the origins of comedy are obscure because it was not treated seriously. From the Greek origins, the word comes into modern usage through the Latin commedia and Italian commedia. It has passed through various shades of meaning. In the Middle Ages it meant simply a story with a happy ending. Thus some of Chaucer's tales are called comedies. Subsequently, the term is applied to mystery plays with a happy ending. The modern usage combines this sense with that in which Renaissance scholars applied it to the ancient comedies. The adjective comic, in modern usage is generally confined to the sense of laughter-provoking. It is distinguished from humorous or witty. Comic provokes spontaneous laughter without a special mental effort. Structure of a comedy. Shakespeare's exposure to classical Greek and Latin comedy helped him in excelling in that art. Shakespeare learned from Terence and Plautus how to organize a plot in a 5-act structure. Generally speaking, the structure of a comedy is as follows. 1. Exposition, a situation with tensions, implicit conflict. 2. Rising action, implicit conflict is developed. 3. Turning point, conflict reaches height, frequently an impasse. 4. Falling action, things begin to clear up. 5. Conclusion, problem is resolved, knots untied. The action moves from conflict to the resolution of conflict, from some sort of bondage to freedom. The movement takes place in spite of the obstacles, complications, reversals, and discoveries. It ends with celebration and unity. At this stage, inclusion or expulsion or elimination of certain misguided characters takes place. They cannot be accommodated or restored to society, as in the case of Malvolio in Twelfth Night. Therefore, a touch of sadness or reality may impinge on the final celebration. This structure differentiates Shakespeare's comedies from earlier works that presented the seemingly random adventures of a hero in a relatively formless way. From the works of Plautus and Terence, Shakespeare learned to use certain stock characters. In classical and Shakespearean comedies, the hero and heroine may have socially inferior helpers. A jester, fool or buffoon frequently leads the hero and heroine's supporters. They uphold the dignity of the institutions they represent and are frequently mocked for their self-importance. Features of Shakespearean romantic comedy. Conventions assist us in understanding literary works belonging to a particular genre. They help to categorize them and illuminate their common features. Genres set up certain expectations because of the shared characteristics. The major conventions of Shakespearean romantic comedy are: 1. Love. Separation and unification of the lovers is the main action of a comedy. A struggle of young lovers to overcome hurdles created by the elders takes place. 2. Mistaken identity. The main source of humor in a comedy is based on the mistaken identities. Therefore, disguises and mistaken identity creates a sort of confusion among the characters. 3. The would-be lovers must overcome obstacles and misunderstandings before being united humorously. The ending frequently involves a parade of couples to the altar and a festive mood or actual celebration expressed in dance, song and feast. Twelfth Night, for example, has 3 such couples. 4. Fantasy. Frequently, it contains elements of the improbable, the fantastic, the supernatural, or the miraculous. Comedies contain unbelievable coincidences, improbable scenes of recognition or absence of recognition, willful disregard of the social order, instantaneous conversions. Enchanted or idealized settings, supernatural beings like witches, fairies, gods and goddesses. The happy ending may be brought about through supernatural or divine intervention. 5. Message. In comedies, there is frequently a philosophical aspect involving the importance of love in human existence, the power of language to help or hinder communication, the transforming power of poetry and art, the disjunction between appearance and reality, and the power of dreams and illusions. 6. Puns. The use of the language with a main focus on pun is a major feature of all kinds of comedies. Shakespeare uses pun very effectively. Shakespeare's comedies. Traditionally, the plays of William Shakespeare have been grouped into 3 categories: tragedies, comedies, and histories. Some critics have argued for a 4th category, the romance. Several of Shakespeare's comedies, such as Measure for Measure and All's Well That Ends Well, have an unusual tone with a difficult mix of humor and tragedy, which has led them to be classified as problem plays or tragicomedies. Shakespeare produced the following comedies: All's Well That Ends Well, As You Like It, Cardenio, Lost, The Comedy of Errors, Cymbeline, Love's Labour's Lost, Love's Labour's Won, Lost, Measure for Measure, The Merchant of Venice, The Merry Wives of Windsor, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Much Ado About Nothing, Pericles Prince of Tyre, Taming of the Eselru, The Tempest, Tivalfi Night, The TVO Gentleman of Verona, The Winter's Tale. 2.4 Sonnet. The sonnet is a popular classical form that has compelled poets for centuries. Traditionally, the sonnet is a 14-line poem written in iambic pentameter, employing one of several rhyme schemes, and adhering to a tightly structured thematic organization. The name is taken from the Italian soncto, which means, a little sound or song. Types of sonnets. Two sonnet forms provide the models from which all other sonnets are formed, the Petrarchan and the Shakespearean. Petrarchan sonnet. The first and most common sonnet is the Petrarchan, or Italian. Named after one of its greatest practitioners, the Italian poet Petrarch, the Petrarchan sonnet is divided into 2 stanzas. The octave, the first 8 lines, followed by the answering sestet, the final 6 lines. The tightly woven rhyme scheme, ABBA, ABBA, CD, or CD, is suited for the rhyme-rich Italian language, though there are many fine examples in English. Since the Petrarchan presents an argument, observation, question, or some other answerable charge in the octave, a turn, or volta, occurs between the 8th and 9th lines. This turn marks a shift in the direction of the foregoing argument or narrative, turning the sestet into the vehicle for the counterargument, clarification, or whatever answer the octave demands. Sir Thomas Wyatt introduced the Petrarchan sonnet to England in the early 16th century. His famed translations of Petrarch's sonnets, as well as his own sonnets, drew fast attention to the form. Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, a contemporary of Wyatt's, whose own translations of Petrarch are considered more faithful to the original though less fine to the ear, modified the Petrarchan, thus establishing the structure that became known as the Shakespearean sonnet. This structure has been noted to lend itself much better to the comparatively rhyme-poor English language. Shakespearean sonnet. The second major type of sonnet, the Shakespearean, or English sonnet, follows a different set of rules. Here, 3 quatrains and a couplet follow this rhyme scheme, a bab, CD, FF, GG. The couplet plays a pivotal role, usually arriving in the form of a conclusion, amplification, or even refutation of the previous 3 stanzas, often creating an epiphanic quality to the end. In Sonnet 130 of William Shakespeare's epic sonnet cycle, the first 12 lines compare the speaker's mistress unfavorably with nature's beauties. But the concluding couplet swerves in a surprising direction. The Spenserian sonnet, invented by 16th-century English poet Edmund Spenser, cribs its structure from the Shakespearean 3 quatrains and a couplet but employs a series of couplet links between quatrains, as revealed in the rhyme scheme, a bab, BC, CD, EE. The Spenserian sonnet, through the interweaving of the quatrains, implicitly reorganized the Shakespearean sonnet into couplets, reminiscent of the Petrarchan. One reason was to reduce the often excessive final couplet of the Shakespearean sonnet, putting less pressure on it to resolve the foregoing argument, observation, or question. 2.5 Revenge tragedy. A. H. Thorndike used the term revenge tragedy in 1900 with reference to a class of plays written in the late Elizabethan and early Jacobean eras, circa 1580s to 1620s. It is a dramatic genre in which the protagonist seeks revenge for an imagined or actual injury. Origins. Most trace the revenge tragedies of William Shakespeare and his contemporaries to Roman tragedy, in particular, Seneca's Theists, wherein the evil repercussions of murder were portrayed. Atreus takes revenge against his brother Thyestes for adultery with his wife. He lures him to Argos for a shared rule, but instead tricks him into eating the cooked flesh of his own children. Seneca's criminals deserve their punishment unless they repent. 2.6 Conclusion. In this unit you have come to know all the concepts prescribed for in the Shakespearean age. In the present lesson we learned the Shakespearean tragedy, Shakespearean comedy, sonnet and revenge tragedy. In the following lesson you will be introduced to Shakespeare's Hamlet. Shakespeare